The Tampa Bay Buccaneers finished the 2023 regular season with a 9-8 record and made the playoffs for the fourth straight year. It was their third straight division title, and they won a playoff game as they beat the Philadelphia Eagles in the wildcard round with a score of 32-9. They would go on to lose to the Lions in the divisional round of the playoffs with a score of 31-23, and all in all, it was a very successful season for the Buccaneers. There were several moments they could have thrown in the towel, like a 39-37 loss to the Texans in Week 9, in which CJ Stroud threw for over 450 yards and 5 touchdowns, or a few weeks later when they dropped to 4-7 with a 27-20 home loss to the Colts. But they never stopped and won 5 of their last 6 games to finish the year with a 9-8 record and win their first playoff game under head coach Todd Bowles. They even had solid rookie contribution from guys like Elijah Cansey and Yaya Diaby, who combined for 11.5 sacks, and had second-round pick Cody Mauch play all 17 games and all 1,100 snaps last year. But not every year is the same, and I truly believe the 2024 Bucs are in for a big letdown. There's a lot of reasons for this, and we're going to break them down in today's video. Now let's begin. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers finished 7th in points allowed per game in 2023 as they allowed an average of just 19.1 points per game. They allowed 30 or more points in just one game in the regular season, which was to the Texans, while allowing 20 points or less in 8 of their 17 games last year. In those 8 games, the Bucs went 7-1, with their lone loss coming to the Falcons in Week 7. Technically, they went 8-1 with the wildcard win over the Eagles. Lavonte David and Antoine Winfield Jr. each had over 100 tackles last year, and each player played some of the best football of their career, and especially Winfield, who was rewarded with a 4-year, $84 million contract to keep him in Tampa through the 2027 season. Well deserved, by the way. The Bucs defense has a lot of pieces entering the 2024 season, and a lot of players I like, and also think are amongst the best in the league at what they do, or will soon be in one player's case. But for the Antoine Winfields, the Lavonte Davids, and the Vita Veas, I have some concern with this defense too. I have a lot of concern with the pass rush, specifically the exterior pass rush, and I don't know how they're going to consistently get home. I like Elijah Cansey a lot, and I think he will be a very good player for a long time, but I also think it would be borderline reckless to solely rely on him as a second-year defensive tackle and to say, hey, we know you're good, and you showed promise during your rookie year. Go out and get us 70-plus pressures from the interior this year, go get us 9 sacks, and force 2 opposing offensive linemen to block you, and give our edges one-on-ones. I know they also have Vita Vea from the interior, and I love a good interior pass rush, but it has to be complemented with at least one good exterior rusher, and this is where I have my concerns with the Bucs. Yaya Diaby led the team last year with 7.5 sacks, and good for him. Having 7.5 sacks as a third-round rookie is a big deal, and if you are a Bucs fan, you should be thrilled with the production he had last year. But what you may not know is Diaby finished the year with just 26 pressures and had a pass rush win rate of just 7.5%. A 7.5% win rate is not good, and Diaby actually finished 9th amongst rookies in pressures last year, meaning he was not consistently getting home, and there were games where, unless you were specifically looking for him, well, you would have missed him. I hope he can become a consistent player for Tampa in 2024, and to be honest, I would prefer a decline in sacks if that meant he got to or around the quarterback more. I would rather him have a 45 or 50 pressure season with just 5 sacks than have 7.5 sacks on just 26 pressures, because that would mean he's winning more consistently and he is getting home more. And if you can do that on a consistent level, then the sacks will come. One other reason I have concerns with the Bucs pass rush entering 2024 is due to the development, or lack of, with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. Joe had 5 sacks in 2023, 3 of which came against the Bears and Panthers. He had 2 sacks against the Bears, and why this is notable is Justin Fields was and is notorious for holding onto the football, and Justin held the ball the longest in 2023 as he had an average time to throw of 3.39 seconds. Second was Lamar Jackson at 3.17. And the reason we bring this up is because the difference of 0.22 seconds, the difference between Justin and Lamar, is the same difference between Lamar and CJ Stroud, who had the 10th highest average time to throw last year. Meaning Justin was a very big outlier in terms of how long he would hold onto the football, meaning it's easier to get sacks when playing Justin due to this. And when 60% of your sacks in one season came against this quarterback and one of the worst offensive lines in all of football in the 2023 Panthers, well, I don't have a lot of confidence in Joe moving forward. Now, if you are a diehard Bucs fan, or if you go and look at Joe's individual box score from 2023, you will see that he had a sack against the Lions, who have one of the best offensive lines in all of football. And we are not conveniently leaving this out. The sack Joe had against the Lions that was credited to him was on a play Jared Goff ran out of bounds at the line of scrimmage. These were 4 of his 5 sacks last year, and when you break it down further, 12 of his 26 pressures last year were against the Bears or Panthers. All of this to say, I don't think there's going to be a contract year breakout from him. If I'm wrong and Joe has a great year and is the missing piece, by all means, I welcome being wrong. But I don't think Joe is a consistent player, or anywhere close enough to a consistent player, that Tampa can really rely on in 2024. Their third edge rusher is Randy Gregory, who will turn 32 in November, and I don't think Randy is a reliable pass rusher at this point in his career either. We will get the second round pick Chris Braswell during the rookie impact part of the video. Now, I worry about their secondary outside of Antoine Winfield Jr. and Jamel Dean. Jamel was a third round pick back in 2019, and he's been a very solid player for them. He is the definition of a good, solid corner that a lot of NFL teams wish they had. And I liked what 2023 UDFA Christian Izien brought them last year, and think he will be a solid nickel corner for them again this year. But the second outside corner for the Bucs leaves a lot to be desired for. There were multiple games last year where Zion McCollum was picked on, and it's because teams do not want to throw at Jamel Dean or even Christian Izien if they can avoid it. The Bucs' run defense is very good, and they finished top 10 in every category last year defensively, and this is why I worry about their secondary this year. Because for the concerns I have with their secondary, I do not have any concerns with their run defense, which of course is led by Vita Vea. So what opposing teams like to do in 2023 was pass the football, because they knew if they were going to try and run against the Bucs defense last year, it was going to have to be outside the hashes, and even then, Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, and everyone else would be there to clean it up. So the solution was try and attack Zion McCollum, try and attack the weak link. The 2023 Lions finished 5th in rushing yards, 1st in rushing touchdowns, and 5th in yards per carry as a team, and ran for 40 total yards when these teams squared off in Week 6. Jared Goff threw for over 350 yards, and that was how they beat the Bucs last year. And I think that's how a lot of teams are going to try and beat them this year. They have a very difficult schedule, and they play teams like the Ravens, Chiefs, Lions, Cowboys, Eagles, and now the Kirk Cousins-led Falcons twice. All of these teams have good quarterbacks, and the Bucs had 9 wins last year due in large part to beating teams like the Panthers twice, the Derek Carr-led Saints in which they forced 3 turnovers, the Titans, and the Bears. Although, credit where it is absolutely due, they went in the Lambeau and played their tails off, and Baker Mayfield had a perfect passer rating in this game, and they played a phenomenal game that was without a doubt one of their best games they played all year. But my big question with the 2024 Bucs is, do you think that's going to be a sustainable model to win football games this year? Do you think you can ask Baker Mayfield or anybody to throw for 381 yards and 4 touchdowns every game? The answer is, of course, no, and due in large part to the pass rush and the weak links in the secondary, I have a reasonable concern with the Bucs entering 2024. Now, for the Bucs offense in 2024, I have a lot of concerns, and it's not just that Baker Mayfield was a one-year wonder and that he's going to go to the player he was in his final year with Cleveland or even during his time with the Panthers. None of that. Now, do I think Baker will regress a little bit this year? Yes, as it's hard to have back-to-back seasons with 28 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So even what would be considered a regression, something like 25 touchdowns to 12 interceptions, I very much think that is possible for Baker, despite it, again, in theory, being a regression. But what I worry about with the Bucs offense in 2024 is something that they have not been able to do over the past 2 years, and that is run the football. In each of the past 2 years, they have finished 32nd in yards per carry, and I think that will continue this year. Now, what was especially concerning with the 2023 Bucs was Rachaad White had over 250 carries last year, technically over 270 carries, and did not have 1,000 yards rushing. He finished tied for second in the NFL in rushing attempts, along with the Offensive Player of the Year in Christian McCaffrey, yet finished 14th in rushing yards. Now, I know the immediate thought may be, well, they added Graham Barton in the first round, and I love Graham as a player, and I absolutely loved that selection for Tampa, and in fact, I thought they got pretty good value for where they selected him in the first round. But do we think Graham Barton as a rookie center is going to take the Bucs from 32nd in yards per carry in not just 2023, but in each of the last 2 seasons to 16th or 17th or 18th? Forget top 5, but even middle of the pack. I personally don't. Now, if you do and you think Graham Barton's going to be that player, go for it. I'm all for a good projection for a guy, but I'm trying to be realistic with what we can expect out of the 2024 Bucs, and I don't expect there to be a tremendous improvement in the run game with either Rachaad White or rookie Bucky Irving. For as fun as a few games were for the Bucs last year, like the Bears game or the Packers game or even the wild card round game against the Eagles, that was not the norm for the Bucs offense last year. They did not regularly put up 27 or more points in a game, and in fact, they finished 20th in points per game last year. Now, I know how much praise they get from the media, and, Baker Mayfield may be back, and we may be seeing the revival of his career and all of that, and I hope Baker proves to be that guy for the long term. He made the Pro Bowl last year, and I hope that level of play continues. But this team reminds me a lot of the Seahawks entering last year, where they had Geno Smith have a revival year in 2022, only to be set up for a letdown in 2023. And one big thing that the Seahawks had entering 2023 that the Bucs most certainly do not have is a solid run game. The Seahawks had Kenneth Walker break out in 2022, and he did have a little bit of a sophomore slump last year, but I don't think Rachaad White and Bucky Irving are anywhere close to what Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet were entering last year. Not only that, but the Bucs had a couple of other things go their way in 2023 as well that I would be pretty surprised if it goes their way this year too. They had a +8 turnover margin for the entirety of the 2023 season, and they only committed 18 turnovers offensively, which was 6th in the NFL. And when you have all of these things go in your favor, like a quarterback resurgence year, like not turning the football over, and like having 2 1,000-yard players, although that could very easily apply to this year as well, I have a hard time seeing the Bucs repeat what they did last year, even in a year where they finished 20th in points per game with a much, much more difficult schedule this year. For the Bucs' rookie impact in 2024, I don't know how much impact they're really going to have outside of Graham Barton, at least consistently. Now, I loved the Graham Barton selection, and I thought it was tremendous value. My only thing with Graham Barton pertaining to the Bucs' run game is I wouldn't expect him to single-handedly dominate the opposing team's interior defensive line, and that they're going to go from 32nd in yards per carry to 15th or 17th or whatever number. And that's really the expectations that need to be set for Graham, is to not single-handedly dominate and anchor an entire offensive line, and that everybody's going to play better just because he's there. But I like him a lot as a prospect. Now, Chris Braswell in the second round was a player I liked relative to where he was drafted. I wasn't the biggest fan of Chris Braswell throughout the early parts of the draft process because there were a lot of mocks in late January that suggested Chris Braswell should be a mid to late first round pick, and I don't think he is a number 1 pass rusher. I think he is a good number 2 pass rusher, and I think he's going to be a good Robin to another pass rusher's Batman in the NFL. Which is fine because we need those types of players. Every NFL team needs a good Robin to a Batman. Pertaining to his rookie year, I think Braswell will have somewhere in the 25 to 30 pressure area, and I think he will be a good long-term contributor for this franchise. Jalen McMillan was a pick I liked a lot, but similar to Braswell, I don't know how much impact he's actually going to have in year one. This pick specifically reminds me a lot of the Ravens 2023 third-round pick Trenton Simpson, which was a linebacker they took out of Clemson to eventually replace Patrick Queen, and I think the Bucs did the same thing here to eventually replace Chris Godwin. Chris was, of course, a third-round pick back in his day when he came out of Penn State. Tyke Smith was a solid prospect coming out of Georgia, but there were some size limitations with him, and there were also some tackling concerns as he missed over 13% of his tackles in his final year at Georgia, and typically if you miss that high of a percent of tackles in the collegiate level, chances are you're not going to go from 13% at a higher level and then have it be down to 8 or 9% in the NFL. Now, Bucky Irving, the running back from Oregon, is a hopeful solid running back in the long term, but I don't know how much he's going to contribute in year one, at least, from an efficiency standpoint, and I think the Bucs are going to struggle to run the football for the third straight year, although we hope that they, of course, don't, and that they, give their quarterback some help, which they have not done a lot of over the past few years. Their other picks were past the 200 mark, so if they make the roster, great. I, of course, would not expect too much from them in year one, or really at all, because, again, they were picked past 200 for a reason. But outside of Graham Barton, I wouldn't expect all that much rookie contribution in year one, but I did like this class because I think these guys will be solid contributors in year two and beyond. The Bucs' schedule in 2024 is another reason why I have a lot of concern with this team moving forward, and concern is kind of tongue-in-cheek because I still think they have a solid floor, and I still think they're going to be at least a 7-win team, but one other thing that does not get discussed about with the Bucs is they were 1-5 against playoff teams last year, and I don't think Todd Bowles is a great head coach. I think he is, at best, a middle-of-the-pack guy, and I don't think he gives you an advantage like other head coaches around the league do. But it is essential that the Bucs start the 2024 season with a 2-1 record because their schedule gets very difficult very fast. Their first 3 games are home against the Commanders in week 1, at the Lions in week 2, then home against the Broncos in week 3. The projected loss here, of course, would be at Detroit in week 2. But after that, they play home against the Eagles, then they go to Atlanta on Thursday night, which is already in a short week, then go to New Orleans in week 6, which, again, you have to play your division opponents on the road, everyone knows that, but playing them back-to-back games is pretty tough, especially when you have a game in week 7, home against the Ravens, who will probably be one of the better teams in all of football, then home against Atlanta in week 8, then go to Kansas City on Monday night in week 9, and on a short week, they get to come home to play the defending conference champion 49ers. Needless to say, the Bucs have to start out 2-1 if they have any chance of getting back to the postseason this year, because that week 4 through 10 stretch is going to be brutal. Now, I don't think they're going to, start the season 2-8 or anything like that, but it's going to be an insanely tough stretch for not just Tampa, but it would be an insanely tough stretch for anybody during that span. So the Bucs schedule this year is obviously a lot harder as they play teams like Kansas City, San Francisco, and Baltimore, all of games which I think Tampa will lose, by the way. So starting out 2-1 for Tampa is a must if they again have postseason aspirations. Now, it does get a little easier after the bye, though not as easy as you would hope, because with the 17-game season, obviously half the league is going to have 9 away games instead of 9 home games, so the Bucs do play a lot on the road after the bye. They play at the Giants, then at the Panthers, then home against the Raiders, then at the Chargers, then at the Cowboys, then home against the Panthers and home against the Saints to close out the year. If the magic number to get to the postseason is 10 wins in the NFC South, with the Falcons now having improved quarterback play in Kirk Cousins for a team that already won 7 games last year with what was, awful quarterback play for Atlanta, I don't see how Tampa gets to 10 wins this year. It's going to be a very, very tough season for them with the amount of difficult opponents they play. Can they get to 7 wins? Yes. Can they get to 8 wins? Yes. But anything beyond that is not something I'm comfortable projecting for the 2024 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, as only about 39% of people watching are subscribed, and it helps the channel tremendously. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.